He didn't start doing any of this until after he grabbed the gun. And this is the second, he said 2 times, asked me, am I willing to lose my life? And I don't like that. I really get stuck sometimes. Like, I can't believe that my sister is not here. And then me being her twin sister is like, I'm just broken.
That was the voice of Aisha Nelson, a 31-year-old Navy veteran and mother, recorded just hours after she said her boyfriend had taken her gun and made statements she believed were threats, while her 6-year-old child stood nearby. She called 911 not once, but again and again, trying to document what was happening inside her home. Police would eventually arrive. Decisions would be made inside that home, and by the end of that night, everything would change. What happened in that house later that night would turn her worst fears into reality. But before we reach the body camera footage that captured Aisha's fear, before police decisions would shape what came next, and before courts would later rule that no one could be held legally responsible, we need to understand how Aisha ended up in that house. To do that, we have to go back to January 4th, 1991, when Aisha Nelson's story began in Newark, New Jersey. To her family, Aisha Nelson was everything you could hope for in a sister, a daughter, and a mother. Born and raised in Newark, she graduated from Central High School in 2009 before deciding to serve her country in the United States Navy. Her family, who raised her alongside her grandmother and sisters, including her twin, Angela, described Aisha as kind, humble, intelligent, and caring, someone who approached life with grace and determination. It was during her military service that Aisha's path would cross with Dante Rashad Hawes, a man who also went by the name Waverly Hawes. At 32 years old, Hawes already had a 9-year-old daughter from a previous relationship and a troubling history behind him. Records show he had a prior conviction for domestic violence involving the mother of his child, while 2 other assault charges were later dismissed. The relationship between Aisha and Dante began with affection and promises, a pattern that would later take a darker turn.
Well, first at 10, it's been more than 6 months since Aisha Nelson called police to say her ex-boyfriend was threatening to kill her.
He followed through on those threats, and now an internal investigation blames in part 2 Dayton police officers' response to Nelson's calls for help. 2 News reporter Kajasia Hawkins joins us live in the studio. Kajasia, you talked with Aisha's family and attorneys. What are they telling you?
John, both Aisha's family and attorney Michael Wright say that police did not listen to her pleas for help, and it ultimately resulted in her and her daughter's lives being taken.
He didn't start doing any of this until after he grabbed the gun. And this is the second, he said 2 times, asked me, am I willing to lose my life? And I don't like that.
This is body cam footage of Aisha Nelson describing the words and actions of her boyfriend, 31-year-old Dante Hawes, and insisting to police that she was uncomfortable before he then killed her, her daughter, and then himself. The altercation started on June 22nd, and DPD officers did not respond to Nelson's calls until about 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd. Despite her pleas, officers left after 30 minutes and did not file a police report, despite Nelson telling them that Hawes had a gun. And an hour later, both 31-year-old Aisha Nelson and her 6-year-old daughter Harper Gwen were shot to death. After a month-long investigation, DPD released a statement saying officers Terrell Moore and Catherine Santos have been suspended for 160 hours and have received written reprimands and are required to attend additional training, but the family attorney says that just isn't enough.
2 lives were lost, and we're saying that a 30-day suspension is warranted and some retraining. What needs to happen is immediate termination and retraining of the entire Dayton Police Department.
Aisha was a Navy veteran, born and raised by her grandmother in New Jersey along with her sisters. One of the reasons Aisha had no place to turn to the night she was murdered. And her twin sister Angela, who spoke exclusively to 2 News, says a big piece of her is forever gone.
I really get stuck sometimes. Like, I can't believe that my sister is not here. And then me being her twin sister is like, I'm just broken.
September 2021, when Aisha decided to relocate from New Jersey to Dayton, Ohio, the dynamic had already begun to change. She moved to provide better educational opportunities for her daughter, Harper Monroe Gwynn. Born around 2016, Harper was described as a sweet and energetic child with her whole future ahead of her. They settled into a home on Burleigh Avenue, a property owned by Hawes's father, and Aisha began paying rent, contributing financially to the household where she believed she and her daughter would be safe. But the sense of safety she thought she had would not last. Family members later said the relationship involved financial manipulation and control, alleging that Hawes cut Aisha's credit cards, drained her bank accounts, and left her economically dependent on him. He was described as someone who relied heavily on his father's support while exerting significant control over the household they shared. The evening of June 21, 2022, began with what was described as a disagreement over video games. The disagreement reportedly stemmed from Hawes's excessive PlayStation use, a seemingly minor conflict that escalated into threats Aisha later told police she believed were life-threatening. Aisha had purchased a gun for home protection, reflecting how unsafe she already felt in her own residence, but Hawes seized the gun and used it to intimidate her. According to Aisha, he waved it in front of Harper while demanding that she leave the home she was paying for.
Good morning. Just to make sure it's still good morning. I appreciate you guys coming out. It is my pleasure, under unfortunate circumstances, along with Attorney Michael Wright, to represent this family of Aisha Nelson and Harper Gwynn. We have Keely Nelson, her sister Tangia, Keely, the mother, and Tangia, her sister, here present as well. Harper was also survived by her father and her grandmother as well, which is mentioned in the press release. As everybody knows, the complaint's been filed in this case in Montgomery County Common Police Court against the City of Dayton and the Dayton Police Department. It's been well reported and previously reported by multiple news outlets of what happened in June of 2022 with respect to Aisha Nelson and Harper. What we do know, and I'm not going to go through the complaint, I'm not going to go through all the details, but generally we know that Aisha on multiple occasions in June of 2022 made multiple calls to the Dayton Police Department to reach out for help and assistance. She received none. We know that after attempting to meet Dayton police in another location at a Family Dollar around the corner, she returned home and made another call to the Dayton Police Department. Again, she received no help. We know that ultimately the Dayton Police Department, Officer Santos and more, responded to the address and apartment she lived at where she was staying with her boyfriend, Mr. Hawes in this case, who ultimately was responsible for the death of Aisha and Harper. And when the police responded after she made multiple pleas and multiple requests for help and for Mr. Hawes to be removed from the location, she received no recognition. She received no recognition of her humanity. After only 30 minutes of talking to Aisha and Mr. Hawes, these officers made no decisions and simply left the location, leaving Aisha with no hope, no help, and no humanity. These officers made no report. They recorded no written statements. And what we do know when they left that location, we know that they knew that there was a gun in the home, which Aisha had identified and informed them on multiple occasions that Mr. Hawes had threatened her with at gunpoint. These officers failed this family, they failed Aisha, and they failed Harper. Because less than an hour after leaving that location, Aisha and Harper were dead at the hands of Mr. Hawes and at the hands of the gun that the police knew were at this particular location. This was unnecessary, and tragically and unfortunately, it was foreseeable and it was avoidable. This family, as a result of filing this lawsuit, wants justice in this case. We want accountability of these officers, and accountability of the Dayton Police Department. What is clear from the policies of this particular police department in Dayton is that while they have a policy for domestic violence investigation, is that they don't take it seriously. There's no way that these officers were appropriately trained on this particular policy, because if they were, Keely and Harper would still be here.
Around 5:30 in the evening on June 22nd, Aisha made her first call to 911. She told the dispatcher that Hawes had threatened her life and had the means to do it because he was in possession of her gun. The dispatcher suggested she visit the police station or go to a domestic violence shelter, but no officers were sent to her home at that time. Aisha was left alone with a man she said had just made threats against her life while her young daughter was present. Hours passed, and the situation did not improve. Just after midnight on June 23rd, Aisha called 911 again, this time asking to meet officers at a Family Dollar store to file a report. During that call, she told the dispatcher she did not want Hawes arrested, explaining that she only wanted to make a report in case something happened. She also mentioned that Hawes had a prior conviction for domestic violence, and her daughter was with her, waiting. This hesitation to seek an arrest is not unusual. Victims of domestic violence often fear the immediate consequences of having their abuser arrested, particularly when they share living space, are financially dependent, or have children involved. Aisha had been paying rent on the home since September 2021 and kept receipts to document it, believing she had every legal right to be there. But she also understood that calling for an arrest could escalate the situation, putting her and Harper in even greater danger.
Well, his dad owns a house. I've met his dad. His dad's a really good guy. His dad owns like 5 houses on this block. He can articulate it as domestic violence and but the fact that she's so, she obviously doesn't believe it. She doesn't believe her, and she's not still here, sitting in the same house with her kid.
Around 2:30 in the morning, Hawes himself called dispatch, claiming that Aisha was acting crazy and asking that she be removed from the property so he could leave without problems. His version of events cast him as the reasonable party and minimized the conflict. Just before 2 in the morning on June 23, 2022, officers Terrell Moore and Catherine Santos arrived at the Burleigh Avenue home. What happened over the next 45 minutes would later draw intense scrutiny, public outrage, and legal challenges over how the situation was handled. Body camera footage released by the Dayton Police Department on July 6, 2022, showed key moments from the officers' response that night. Aisha's fear, her attempts to do the right thing, her explanations for why she didn't want her abuser arrested but needed documentation of his threats, and Harper's presence during the arguments. It also showed the officers' decision to leave the scene without further intervention. They left without filing a report, seizing the weapon, or making an arrest, despite threats Aisha said had been made and Hawes's documented domestic violence history. Around 2:35 in the morning, officers Moore and Santos cleared the scene, believing they had successfully de-escalated the situation, unaware of what would unfold just hours later. According to investigators, sometime between 2:50 and 4 in the morning, Dante Hawes shot both Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn in the basement of their home, the same basement police had directed him to go, the same home Aisha had paid rent on for months, a place that was supposed to be her home. At approximately 11:45 in the morning on June 23rd, Hawes's father called for a welfare check, concerned that he couldn't reach his son. When officers arrived, they discovered what no family should ever have to face. Aisha and Harper were both found shot dead inside the home, with glass from the front door scattered across the entry. Dante Hawes had fled. Police tracked him through GPS pings on his phone, following his path as he drove from Ohio towards Alabama. That afternoon, authorities in Falkville, Alabama, found Hawes dead in his vehicle from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, ending the investigation into his actions.
My name is Keely Nelson. I am Asia Nelson, mother, and Harper Monroe Gwynn, grandmother. We all are from Newark, New Jersey, born and raised. The reason why I'm actually doing this is to bring awareness to Asia and Harper. Asia and Harper were murdered on June the 23rd of 2022 by her boyfriend, Dante, excuse me. Who was killed by Dante Beverly Howes, who then drove to Alabama and killed himself. Asia was a wonderful mother. She was a wonderful human being. She adored her daughter. That was her light. That was her life. It's hard to actually sit here and do this, to speak upon this situation, because it truly touches my heart. It's something that no matter what the situation is or whichever way it may have went, you would never want anyone to endure the pain and suffering of losing a child and a grandchild, no matter what it is.
On June 29, 2022, the Montgomery County Coroner's Office officially identified the victims as Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn. A week later, on July 6th, the Dayton Police Department released body camera footage from the domestic violence call, sparking public outrage and renewed demands for accountability. The footage showed key moments from the officers' response that night: Aisha's fear, her attempts to do the right thing, her explanations for why she didn't want her abuser arrested but needed documentation of his threats, and Harper's presence during the arguments. It also showed the officers' decision to leave the scene without further intervention. They left without filing a report, seizing the weapon, or making an arrest, despite threats Aisha said had been made, and Hawes's documented domestic violence history. Around 2:35 in the morning, Officers Moore and Santos cleared the scene, believing they had successfully de-escalated the situation, unaware of what would unfold just hours later. According to investigators, sometime between 2:50 and 4 in the morning, Dante Hawes shot both Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn in the basement of their home, the same basement police had directed him to go, the same home Aisha had paid rent on for months, a place that was supposed to be her home. At approximately 11:45 in the morning on June 23rd, Hawes's father called for a welfare check, concerned that he couldn't reach his son.
And we lost 3 people. We lost him as well. But it's something that I want to address to the public, that they do not know the full aspect of the story. But the most hurtful thing about it is the way that it was done, the neglect that was done to all 3 parties, not just myself, but also on Dante's part as well. It was all a cry for help. But in this situation, no one wins. We all lose. You know, I lose, his family lose. And if I must say, you know, it was a neglect that was done on both ends. It's a lot of ifs, shouldas, couldas, wouldas. But we're here today, and this is what is happening. I know my daughter, she was a fighter. You know, she would want to stand up for what is right. And it actually been a year now since all of this has taken place.
She obviously doesn't believe it. She doesn't believe it, or she would not still be here sitting in the same house with her kid.
When officers arrived, they discovered what no family should ever have to face. Aisha and Harper were both found shot dead inside the home, with glass from the front door scattered across the entry. Dante Hawes had fled. Police tracked him through GPS pings on his phone, following his path as he drove from Ohio towards Alabama.
That afternoon, authorities in Falkville, Alabama, found Hawes dead in his vehicle from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, ending the investigation into his actions. On June 29, 2022, the Montgomery County Coroner's Office officially identified the victims as Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn. A week later, on July 6th, the Dayton Police Department released body camera footage from the domestic violence call, sparking public outrage and renewed demands for accountability. The footage showed key moments from the officers' response that night: Aisha's fear, her attempts to do the right thing, her explanations for why she didn't want her abuser arrested but needed documentation of his threats, and Harper's presence during the arguments. It also showed the officers' decision to leave the scene without further intervention. They left without filing a report, seizing the weapon, or making an arrest, despite threats Aisha said had been made and Hawes' documented domestic violence history.
And it's taken a lot out of me to sit here and do this. I contemplated over and over again on what would be the right thing to say. How do you address the people? What do you say? It's no right or wrong to this. When I'm speaking to you right now, this is something that's coming from me that I'm speaking authentically to you. As a mother, as a sister, as a cousin, as a friend. We don't know when we're going to be in these situations. But one thing that I do know, Asia will want her voice heard. Her daughter as well.
Around 2:35 in the morning, Officers Moore and Santos cleared the scene, believing they had successfully de-escalated the situation, unaware of what would unfold just hours later. According to investigators, sometime between 2:50 and 4 in the morning, Dante Hawes shot both Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn in the basement of their home, the same basement police had directed him to go, the same home Aisha had paid rent on for months, a place that was supposed to be her home. At approximately 11:45 in the morning on June 23rd, Hawes' father called for a welfare check, concerned that he couldn't reach his son. When officers arrived, they discovered what no family should ever have to face. Aisha and Harper were both shot dead inside the home, with glass from the front door scattered across the entry. Dante Hawes had fled. Police tracked him through GPS pings on his phone, following his path as he drove from Ohio toward Alabama. That afternoon, authorities in Falkville, Alabama, found Hawes dead in his vehicle from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, ending the investigation into his actions. On June 29, 2022, the Montgomery County Coroner's Office officially identified the victims as Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn. A week later, on July 6th, the Dayton Police Department released body camera footage from the domestic violence call, sparking public outrage and renewed demands for accountability. The footage showed key moments from the officers' response that night: Aisha's fear, her attempts to do the right thing, her explanations for why she didn't want her abuser arrested but needed documentation of his threats, and Harper's presence during the arguments. It also showed the officers' decision to leave the scene without further intervention. For many who later watched the footage, it fueled a growing belief among the family and advocates that the tragedy might have been preventable. Aisha's family said they were devastated and angry. Aisha's mother, Keely Nelson, expressed her frustration at having few answers beyond the basic fact that her daughter and granddaughter had been shot. The family made clear they were not seeking financial gain, but accountability and changes that might prevent another family from experiencing the same loss. The Dayton Police Department launched an internal investigation into the officers' handling of the domestic violence call. According to that review, Officers Moore and Santos did not file a report documenting the incident, despite departmental protocols requiring documentation. The investigation also found that officers did not seize the weapon Aisha had told them about and did not complete a full risk assessment that could have identified the level of danger she and Harper faced. More than 7 months after Aisha and Harper were killed, the department announced discipline for the officers who had responded that night: 160 hours of unpaid leave for each officer. For Aisha's family and many members of the public, that punishment felt small when measured against the loss of a mother and child and the future Harper would never get to live. But for the family, suspensions were not enough. They wanted answers about why standard protocols had not been followed, why a weapon had not been seized when a victim explicitly reported its presence and the threats made with it, and why officers focused on de-escalation rather than documentation or further intervention. On December 5, 2022, the family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Dayton, the Dayton Police Department, and officers Moore and Santos. The lawsuit alleged wanton, willful, reckless disregard for Aisha and Harper's safety, failure to protect them despite what the lawsuit described as evidence of danger, and violations of department policy, including the failure to file a report and the inability to remove the weapon from the scene. The family sought accountability through the courts, hoping that if internal discipline was not sufficient, civil litigation might force meaningful change. In May 2023, Judge Stephen Dankoff dismissed the wrongful death lawsuit, ruling that under Ohio law, police officers have no special duty to protect individual citizens. Under Ohio law, police owe a duty to the public at large, not to specific individuals who call for help. The judge found that the officers were entitled to immunity under Ohio law. The family appealed the decision. But on January 19, 2024, the Ohio 2nd District Court of Appeals upheld the dismissal, affirming that the officers and the city were immune from civil liability. There was no settlement, no admission of wrongdoing beyond the internal discipline, and no court-ordered changes to policy. As of early 2026, the family has not returned to the Burley Avenue home. The broken glass from the front door remained visible months after the murders, a physical reminder of the violence that occurred there. For the family, the house holds nothing but trauma, a place where 2 lives were lost and where they believe the system failed them. There is no formal obituary for Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn. Cotton Furniver Service noted that an obituary was not available, but invited people to share memories and condolences. On gunmemorial.org, more than 1,800 virtual candles have been lit in their memory, messages from strangers honoring lives they never knew. This case is not an isolated incident. It reflects a broader pattern seen across the United States. On average, roughly 3 women are killed by intimate partners each day. And according to data from the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics, only about 35% of sexual assault and domestic violence incidents are reported to police, with fear of retaliation listed as the leading reason victims do not come forward. Today, the case is closed. Dante Hawes is dead by suicide. Aisha Nelson and Harper Monroe Gwynn have been laid to rest, and the home on Burley Avenue remains a place the family cannot return to, not because of unanswered questions, but because the answers are already known. Aisha called for help. The system responded, and the outcome forces a harder question not just about what went wrong here, but about what will happen the next time someone makes that call. Share your thoughts below in the comments, and if you want to see more cases where accountability is questioned and systems are put under the microscope, choose a video on your screen.
She called out to the police. She cried for help. Some people say, I see some heartbreaking things that be said about this situation. You know, oh, she should have left. She was the reason why her daughter's not here. Those things are hurtful. They hurt. You know, I ask myself, you know, why didn't she just leave? I do. Like, leave. Come. You know, come. You have a family here. But I also say, how often do our loved ones, a mate, you get into an argument with someone, you know, and they be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We take it lightly. You know, we do. Oh, he's just upset. They're just mad. She's saying this. But in all actuality, it's really happened. For someone that she known for 13 years. 13 years. He was her friend first before he was actually her boyfriend. He wasn't even he was her boyfriend shorter time than he was her boyfriend, you know? And she knew the story behind him. And that's the reason why, you know, she didn't want him arrested. She knew that what was going to happen. But at the same time, she wanted to document it because that's who Asia was. Asia was the type of strong, independent, woman and mother. I'm going to make sure that everything that I do is correct. I'm going to dot my I's and cross my T's. And in this situation, that's what she did. I never thought that I would be sitting here, and it's God's doing and it's God's will. I never thought that I would have the strength to be able to sit here and talk about losing a child. And Asia is a twin. She has an identical twin. Yeah, she has an identical twin, Angela. And they are 1 minute apart. It has really hurt my family. I used to say, if anything happened to my children, they might as well just roll me over and bury me with them. Them were my plans. But God had other plans for me. I'm sitting here and everybody say, you be so strong. You so strong, but it's not me. This is God. Trust me, it's God. If I had it my way, I would roll over in the corner and just ball up. But I'm a fighter, just like my baby was. She was a fighter. And everything that I'm doing is for her and my granddaughter. Harper was a light. She was a special light in Asia's eyes. If you only knew what kind of mother that she was to her baby, you would understand. I hear cool things. She got her baby killed. She didn't. If she ever thought that would happen, she'd have died and went to hell first.